Hi everyone! In this section, we are going to look at different ways to assess intercultural competence, or ICC for short. As you know, intercultural competence refers to the way you perceive and behave in different cultures. So, it is important to be able to measure this construct. It is hard to measure intercultural competence because there exists a wide variety of definitions. Nevertheless, there are two prominent assessment formats: surveys and portfolio assessments. Most surveys range in length from 9 items to over 160 items. Typically, these surveys are delivered through an online format, though some assessments are also offered in a paper and pencil format. In addition to surveys, portfolios that include constructed response items are also used to assess ICC in higher education. As some of you might find this concept unfamiliar, I'm going to explain it in more details. A portfolio assessment is a collection of materials produced either by an individual over time or scores from various assessments or both. Currently, no standard portfolio assessment exists, meaning that the content, platform, and scoring method vary across institution, studies, and contexts. Portfolios are able to capture context-specific skills, such as writing business letters for a local business owner in a third world country, and the development of those skills over time. Thus, ICC is captured through the collection of work products from different time points in a student's career. The selection of the format depends on the intended purpose of the assessment. Now, we are turning to one of the most widely used means of assessing ICC, which is the Likert scale items. Likert scale items typically ask the respondents to rate their agreement with a given statement on a scale that ranges from one stream to another, such as from strongly agree to strongly disagree. Some assessments use anchors that directly ask respondents to assess themselves on a particular skill. For example, a behavioral regulation item may ask respondents to indicate whether they would change their behavior in accordance with cultural customs. Another variation across ICC assessment with the Likert scale items is the number of response categories or points on the response scale. Most assessments use a 5-point Likert scale, although other ranges from 4 points to a 7-point scale. To design a simple Likert scale assessment using Microsoft Word, please look at this video.
Welcome to the Remark Software YouTube channel. In this demonstration, I will show you how to create a Likert scale using Microsoft Word. This example will be spaced accordingly to be read by Remark Office OMR. First, I'll insert my table. We'll create a 6x6 table so that we can use our scale with 5 statements. Next, I'll label the answer choices in the top row of the table, ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. To keep everything in line, we'll center the labels and their choices in the cells. Now I'll create labels for our answer choices 1 through 5. For these, I'll use the OMR bubble font that installs in your Windows font directory with Remark Office OMR. Next, I'll enter the statements to be evaluated in the first column. To keep them lined up with our answer choices, we'll center them in the cell aligned to the left. Next, I'll adjust the height and width of the rows and columns under the Layout tab of Table Tools to ensure sufficient space between bubbles. Ideally, you should have at least 3/8 of an inch between the bubbles and the text. Lastly, we want to remove all borders from the table. We'll do that by selecting the No Border option on the drop-down menu under Borders.
To directly measure the knowledge components of ICC, multiple choice items are typically used. MCQ items are designed so as to identify the perception of the respondents on specific issues. Some multiple choice items assess cultural knowledge that is general or global, and others assess knowledge that is specific to one culture. An example of a global culture item would be something akin to, what is the most popular sport in the world? As one can see, such item does not ask about one particular culture, but rather references the general world population. Simulations involve role-playing activities in which participants engage in a limited intercultural scenario. The simulation may require the participant to interact with a confederate, such as a paid assistant who has been instructed to act in a particular way, or an avatar, a figure representing a person, or a computer-simulated character, who may be enacting his or her own cultural norms, the cultural norms of a different group, or fictitious norms. Depending on the simulation, other participants in the simulation may play this role instead of confederates. Now, we'll have a look at the validity and reliability evidence of the existing assessments. As previously discussed, the majority of ICC assessments consist exclusively on Likert types items, and the test and scale reliability evidence was generally adequate. Over 90% of the scales provided evidence of adequate reliability, most commonly assessed via coefficient alpha, a measure of the average intercorrelations among test items. However, for ICC assessment with more than one subdomain, several measures with adequate overall alpha values. One important aspect of validity evidence is the internal structure, that is, the dimensionality of the assessments, which indicates whether the association among test items corresponds to one or more intended domains or dimensions of the assessment. One of the most commonly used methods to evaluate the internal structure is confirmatory factor analysis. An acceptable index of model fit indicates that the structure of the assessment is as intended, based on the relationship between the test items and the constructs. The second aspect of validity evidence is the relationship with conceptually related constructs, traditionally known as conversion and discriminant validity. A correlation coefficient between two assessments is typically used to estimate the degree to which the constructs measured by the two assessments are related to each other. For the assessment of ICC, sole reliance on self-report measures present several challenges. First, it may be confounded with students' experience levels. The typical young adult will have limited exposure to multicultural environments and less experience reflecting upon the skills and behaviors comprised by ICC. Thus, items that rely on previous experience may be adversely impacted by the lack of exposure. Other confounds include cognitive biases, in particular future-oriented optimism, which may further complicate self-report as students respond to items based on their most idealistic self. Additionally, self-report items may be inappropriate for assessing interaction tendencies and other ICC skill components. Moreover, although the current self-support assessment seems to reliably measure the attitudinal components of ICC, faking behaviors may present an additional challenge for self-report measures. The tendency for respondents to deliberately provide inaccurate responses or self-descriptions to make themselves appear more attractive, interesting, or valuable is a critical concern in self-report attitudinal measures such as those on ICC assessment. Self-report respondents can engage in faking behaviors intentionally and unintentionally. For many years, faking behaviors was conceptualized as socially desirable responding. In order to avoid faking, external items can be administered, and alternative item type should be employed. Another known challenge to assessing the knowledge and skills associated with ICC is that they can be context-dependent. For example, cultural knowledge is often situated within a specific culture and may require specific language skills. However, assessing ICC with items referencing a specific culture may be unfeasible. An individual may come into contact with a number of different cultures within his or her lifetime. As a result, it may be preferable to assess cultural general knowledge or knowledge that is useful in interpreting, coping with, and adapting to cross-cultural interactions. That is, instead of assessing how knowledgeable an individual is about the cultural norms and practices of a particular country or region, the more desirable approach may be to assess an individual's recognition that a new situation may be influenced by cultural differences. To wrap up the lesson, I would like you to answer the following question. What are some popular tools to measure ICC? How can we judge the validity and reliability of the assessments? What are some challenges in designing an ICC assessment? If you can't answer these questions, please read the documents required or discuss with your partners. Thank you.